When we come back, Life in Exile, my exclusive interview with a man who knows exactly what it's like to flee a revolution. Prince Reza Pahlavi, the son of the Shah of Iran, exiled with his family more than 30 years ago, joins me here tonight. You're looking at a house in London owned by the family of Egyptian President Hosni Mubarak. His son and apparent heir, Ghalam Mubarak, is believed to have fled there. My next guest knows exactly what it's like to be forced out of his country like this. Prince Reza Pahlavi, the son of the Shah of Iran, was exiled with his family after the Islamic Revolution. He lived in this country since 1984. Prince Reza, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for
joining me this evening.
My pleasure.
What are your thoughts as you see the events unfurling in Egypt?
Before anything, Mr. Morgan, if you allow me to say that Egypt has a very special place in my heart and my family's heart. It is the country that offered my family sanctuary and welcomed us with open arms. I'm eternally grateful to the Egyptian people on behalf of my family. This is something we will never forget. And we are, of course, grateful to both President Sadat and President Mubarak for having allowed us the opportunity to visit Egypt, to be able to pay our respects on my father's tomb, which, as you know, lies in Egypt. Having said that, I've been, of course, following the recent events very closely. And what I can tell you is not necessarily specific to Egypt, but when we see Iran, we see Tunisia, and we see many other things, I think it speaks of a new era, and it speaks of a new generation, a generation that demands to be heard, a generation that can no longer take no for an answer, a generation that expects to have every right in freedom and participation, and of course, opportunities. And as such, I think it is time for the world to recognize that if we had had eras where leaders would make decisions or foreign powers would make decisions, isn't it about time that we let the people make the decisions and have a choice?
Isn't the problem with that is that it's a great idea in theory. We all would agree with this. Power to the people, give them what they want. As you know better than most, in 1979 in Iran, the wrong kind of people took over, many would argue. You got these Islamic fundamentalists came in, suddenly it turned into a very different country very quickly. You know, I could see potentially the danger here with Egypt. If people aren't careful and this political void goes on too long, you could see a similar problem where extremists come in and you end up with a very, very different country.
No, of course, I would understand those who would be concerned about that outcome. But then again, don't we learn from history? I hope we do. And I don't think you should underestimate the intelligence of people who have known how wrong things could turn by looking at what happened in Iran. I don't think that what has propelled Tunisians or Egyptians or Yemenis or even Jordanians to speak out is motivated by the Islamists who took over our country and have kept it hostage for 30 years. I think they take heart for what happened in 2009 of the Green Movement and the aspiration of today's generation who has, by trial and error and by paying a very heavy price, appreciates what it is that we have a separation of religion from state as a prerequisite to democracy. They appreciate human rights. They appreciate those things that would be jeopardized should they fall into the trappings of extremists taking over. I don't think people are oblivious to that. So give people a little bit more faith on that, but work with them, help them so that indeed we cannot have the wrong outcome. And the best way to guarantee that you won't have a wrong outcome is to help the institutions that are moderate, that are secular, that are democratic, because the radicals will then be marginalized. On the other hand, if you don't do all of the above, these forces will become cynical, they will become hostile, which is the perfect breeding ground for extremists who always take advantage of that and turn it into their advantage.
Have you or any of your family spoken to President Mubarak in the last week?
Not in recent weeks, of course. My mother, who regularly goes to Egypt every year, again, on the anniversary of my father's passing, you know, has opportunities sometimes to visit with the president's wife. I haven't had any recent contact, so I've nothing new to really indicate.
You now live in America. You
Yes.
have your home here in Washington.
Yes.
There's obviously a very divided opinion now in America, a growing division here between people who believe that you should stay loyal to your friends and that President Mubarak, even though he's been oppressive to his people, has on a bigger global stage certainly been an ally of America and done some very important work for America. And there are those who say, well, forget all that. He's treated his people badly. The people are now rebelling against him. They want a new government, a new regime. They want freedom and democracy. Which side of the fence are you? Because you've been through all this in different circumstances, but it's a similar ideology. Which way are you going here? Do you think the people of Egypt now have the right to do what they're doing?
In my school of thought, I've always been for people power and the right to self-determination. Having said that, I still believe that President Mubarak has a historic opportunity to bring about the appropriate transition and go down in history as somebody who, at the end of his career, helped the country steer in the right direction. If you hit the call of the people today the proper way. As such, I don't think that he should be either prejudged or pre-condemned, because it's an opportunity to demonstrate what you're willing to do. I think we should not...
but no government really should ever be allowed to mistreat their people in the way that in latter years he has done.
Of course.
Because there can be no dispute that the police...
That's a no-brainer decision as far as whose side you're on. But having said that...
do you feel he's brought it on himself to a certain degree?
Well, I think, this is something for the Egyptian people to determine, and I think, much later when history is written, we will certainly have a very objective assessment of when all the dust settles, so to speak. Right now, there's a crisis in Egypt. Where could it lead? Can it lead to a smooth transition? Could there be genuine reforms? Can there be free elections? Can there be an opportunity for the new generation to elect their own leaders the way they always wanted to? All of that depends on what the current leadership does. And if it does it the right way, and if the people are assured that this time they're going to be heard as opposed to be neglected yet again, I think we could, in this sense, avert chaos. We could, in this sense, see a transition that does not lead to anarchy, because that would be the worst-case scenario. Again, it's a matter of what is being implemented. It has to be a concert of the people in Egypt, the opposition, the current regime.
Prince Reza, let me stop you there, because we have to go to a break. When we come back, I know that you're a big advocate of social media, and I want to talk to you in particular about how Twitter, I know you tweet, and technology are driving this crisis in Egypt.
Uprising in Egypt. Stay with the worldwide leader in news. CNN, on air, online, and on your phone. Selling the girl next door. CNN, Sunday.
All these people need freedom. And we need you to support us.
Back now with my guest, Prince Reza Pahlavi, the son of the exiled Shah of Iran. But first, we've had a number of tweets asking, what is this number that Google and Twitter have set up so that you can circumnavigate the ban on the internet and the closure of the mobile networks? Well, the answer's now on screen, and you can ring, if you're in Egypt, any one of those three numbers, and you can speak to tweet. It's a brand new innovation that Google and Twitter have brought in tonight, and it will enable you to tweet from Egypt. And I urge you to do that, and I also urge you to tweet me at Piers Morgan. Tell me what's happening there. Tell me how we can relay this to our viewers. Thank you. Prince Reza, when you yourself are on Twitter, you have 40,000 followers. How important has it been, do you think, social networking, and Twitter in particular, in getting the message out in Egypt?
Well, I think since electricity was invented, it's the next best invention since then. And there's no question that in today's world, this technology has proven to be a vital link between dissidents and activists that are fighting their respective oppressive regimes in their countries with the outside world and among themselves. From Myanmar to Venezuela, from Iran to wherever else.
Do you find it easy to communicate via Twitter with people in Iran, for example?
Well, you know that we have our ups and downs. I mean, the regime has very strategically done pretty much the same thing when they interrupt, internet access, in some cases, shut off cellular communication. There's nothing new to us as Iranians, because we've been experiencing this for years now. But to answer your question, absolutely, it's a vital way of communicating. It's very important to help better orchestrate and organize. So I've been very much involved with that aspect as a means of communication with my fellow compatriots.
It seems to me, the young have an edge here over any authority. They understand the technology better than the governments do. I was in China recently, in Shanghai. 30,000 people are employed by the government in China to try and suppress the youth from using social networking. And when I went out with some of these youngsters in their 20s, they were all laughing. And they pulled out their cell phones and said, we don't go through Chinese proxies. We go through American ones or French ones or wherever they could get their hands on. And they were all on Twitter and all on Facebook. And because of that, they could then find out what's happening in the rest of the world And it's that that's fueling, I think, a lot of the anger in Egypt, because they're not just fed up with their position in their own country. They know it's better elsewhere.
Indeed. And I may add something here. It's not only important for them to know that they can communicate to the outside world. It's equally important that they know that the world has heard them and is answering them back. Let's not forget the second part of the component. What empowers people more, what gives them more hope, is that their call for help has not gone unnoticed, that it's been heard, whether it's CNN responding, whether it's a government responding. This is a crucial element to further encourage people who are asking for their rights to begin with, their rights to be heard, their rights to be recognized, their rights to vote. And in this era in which we live, this is a fundamental aspect, the very difference between hope and optimism that leads to stability, as opposed to cynicism and despair that leads to chaos and radicalism.
I couldn't agree more. President Reza, thank you so much for coming in today.
Thank
I know
you for
you're still in mourning for your brother, and I really appreciate you sparing the time.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Still ahead, the man who sits atop a 1.5